Hi guys, welcome to Always 34. Now we're doing this a little bit different today, and I'll explain why in just a minute. I'm going to bring Blackie in just a second, but I wanted to talk to you specifically. If you'll look behind me, we're on the banks of P River today. If you'll remember a few episodes back on my channel, we went to the Convergence Park down at Geneva, where this river and the Choctawhatchee River come together. Well, I work for my local city, okay? And this morning, about 6 o'clock, they put us under a flood watch. You've heard Blackie and I talk. We've been hashing this for more than a year, but you've heard us talk about the importance of bug out kits, grab bags, and the like. This is a prime example. This is real time, okay? You've heard us talk about the thunderstorms that have been rolling through here every day for weeks. This is the end result of it. And we've been placed on standby for call out should the worst case scenario happen. My little town has experienced since 1990 about 8 floods, and 2 of them were fatal. One of them was fatal. We had 2 casualties in it. But back to my point, Blackie and I cannot stress the importance of doing this one simple act. We don't have any hurricanes in the Gulf yet. We've got an awful lot of hurricane season left. And the water in the Gulf is unusually warm, which is a bad sign. Matter of fact, the surf has been so rough down at Panama City that they have closed the beaches. I don't know if they're still closed. I know last weekend for the 4th of July they were shut down. If you went on the beach, you got a ticket. If you tried to go in the water, they took you to jail. That's how bad it was. So give me a chance to reposition, and I'll bring Blackie in here, okay? See you in a minute. All right, guys, we're back. And, of course, my mentor and sidekick.
Hello there. I'm so happy to be here.
Again, like I said, this is, you're not mistaken, this is Always 34. And when did we start talking about go bags and kits?
At least 1 or 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
Somewhere in very early of it.
Yes.
And we talked about that you need to have basic grab and goes for this. And like Bear told you, we're under a flood watch right now. And at the same time, the time of this video, they've just had Vermont and New York State have been horribly flooded. And that part of the country is not accustomed to this kind of sudden weather.
No.
And so a lot of those people, they had an hour or less warning, you've got to go, you know, because this whole area is going to be cut off because this bridge is about to be lost. If you don't get out of here now, you ain't getting out. And so in those cases, you need a portable, I got to grab it and go, and not have it scattered all over the house. In that closet, in that garage cupboard, in whatever, where it's grab it and go.
Yes.
You know.
Preferably something that's, you know, the plastic totes that lock on either end. Those are ideal for what we're talking about.
They stack well.
They do. They stack well. They hold a lot of stuff if you pack it right, if you choose wisely and pack it right. You need one for every member of your household. Mom needs one, Dad needs one, and kids need one. If you have more than one kid, split it. Put 2 kids' stuff in one box and 2 kids' stuff in the other box if you happen to have 4. Be creative, okay? But you can look behind us. This may look angry to some people, but trust me, it's not angry yet. But it is rising. Slowly but surely, it's coming up. Y'all have seen us on this riverbank many, many, many times. And
where we're standing right here will be 4 to 6 feet underwater.
It can be.
And it's 25 feet right now down
Yeah.
to the water level.
That's a good point, because this is a channel, okay? If you cut it through the middle, what you'll find is a box, okay? And in that box, it works kind of like a fire hose without a top on it, all right? It compacts all that water into this little bitty space and then shoots it out like a garden hose or a fire hose. Going around curves won't slow it down much.
The more pressure, the more it's coming, the more pressure it gets,
Right.
until it finally tops up out of its banks, and then it can spread and slow down.
Right.
So
But it's a roller coaster ride before then.
Before that, so it's cutting harder, it's doing more. And a lot of people don't think of flood, you know. One, let's talk about the fact that the average homeowner's policy does not cover flood. So just because you got a homeowner's policy, you may not have flood insurance. And so if a freak occurrence like this happens and water comes up in a place you never thought that you would have water at, your homeowner's insurance won't cover it. They'll tell you got to have flood insurance for that. So if you're anywhere that could have that possibility, you need to have that coverage for down the line. Another thing, if you're in any place that has severe storms like that, I recommend you go get at least one of them big, heavy tarps. Harbor Freight carries them. They're about 80 bucks a piece, and they're like 20 by 30, one side silver, one side black. That's for the hole in your roof that happens during the storm, where you get some shingles lift off and suddenly there's water pouring into your house. And you get a little low where you could go outside, tie a rope to it, and just throw the rope over the house and pull it over the house to keep your house from getting damaged. That should be part of the kit in some place that could be susceptible to it. Am I going to recover from this? Because look at these people in Vermont right now that the streets turned into rivers like that.
It happens quick. Speaking of Vermont and New York, if you'll think back a month or 6 weeks ago, we were talking about Arizona.
Yeah.
Okay. In Arizona, I've driven through Arizona many, many times, and there's nothing out there but cactuses and Gila monsters. But those dry riverbeds are a warning sign, because, and people of Arizona, I'm not insulting you. I love your state. It is one of the most beautiful states I've ever been in. But I'm just being, from an Easterner's point of view, I'm just making an observation. About 6 weeks ago, though, all of the snow that had been happening in the mountains over the winter was melting, and it had to go somewhere. Down those dry river channels is where it goes. Also, they were having monsoonal rains, which is something that very rarely happens in the Southwest. But yet, here it was, dumping 4 feet of water on top of the 6 feet of water that's already there.
And what you've got out there is mostly brush.
Yeah.
You don't have timber like we do to kind of catch and slow and disperse.
Right.
So that water is sucking up any kind of debris in the channel, which becomes a battering ram, getting faster and faster, and there's nothing there to slow it down. So when it does go off the bank and it expands, it's still running at high speed out there. And when it hits that bridge, all that debris slams in the bridge, piles up, and now you got a bathtub stopper, and the water starts pouring everywhere, trying to find that low ground to get out of.
Yeah. In March of 1990, we had one of those 1,000-year floods here in my town.
What, our third 1,000-year flood they've told us about? Yeah.
Yeah, this was in March of 1990, and I was working with the city then. I'll never forget it. I was standing on one of our bridges. We only have 5 roads that come into town, 4 of them cross bridges. I was standing on the bridge when I heard, I was at my house around the corner when I heard the civil defense siren go off, and it didn't turn off. Okay, they evacuated City Hall and the police department and just hit the button and ran out the door. So this old World War II air raid siren cranks up and does not cut off. What cut the siren off was it shorted out with flood water. And I can remember I threw my clothes on and got to the bridge just in time to see a 12-foot wall of water go across the other end of the bridge. Okay? I've seen this in action. You know, it's the very front edge of the wall of water was about 8 inches tall, and it was rolling. And within the space of just a few seconds, it had gone up to 8 or 10 feet. And by the time the city, which is surrounded by a levee, by the time the city filled up, there was 17 feet of water in the space of about 3 minutes downtown.
Yeah. I was actually working at a down in Dothan. I had to be up at like 3:30 in the morning to get to my job. And so I was headed to work listening to the live on the radio that morning. And when I got up at like 2:30, they were doing a live remote from the courthouse steps saying, we're not in any danger right now, but we're concerned about it. 30 or 40 minutes later, it was, well, go ahead and get up, get the kids up, get everybody dressed, get you some breakfast, take your valuables that you really, really, really don't want to lose, like your marriage certificate, your insurance papers and all that, and go put them in the car. You know,
Get ready.
Get ready. 20, 30 minutes after that, it was, you might want to wake up your neighbors just in case. Make sure all your neighbors are woke up.
Yeah, fast forward a couple of hours between 3:30 in the morning and my event at 6. That's what happened.
Yeah, and I remember when they called on the radio, the spokesman had come down, was talking, saying this is not a big concern, we want everybody to remain calm. And then the reporter talked back, and you could hear that 2 state troopers had just run up the steps beside them. And then the next person that came to the radio said, get the hell out of Elba, there's one bridge left out. Get the hell out of Elba now, leave it.
That was the one I was standing on.
Yeah, leave it. Just
get out.
Get you and the kids and get out of Elba.
Whatever you're wearing, get in the car.
Leave the rest
leave.
of it.
Yeah, leave the rest of it. And it happens that quick. We are not the harbingers of doom, okay? But we've been through some crap in our years.
Yeah.
We don't want you to go through the same crap that we've been through, okay?
You need something to grab and take with you.
Yep. When I went to, when I got my alert this morning, I got in my city truck and I went to the gas pump and I filled my city truck up. I checked my grab bag. I've got a grab bag that I keep in the front seat, and I keep, I don't keep a lot of water, but I got stuff to put water in from the house. But I checked my grab bag and I usually keep about 4 MREs in my go bag because I've been stuck out before, and not again.
Yeah.
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you.
Yeah.
Or flip it.
Yeah.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Because I didn't learn.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, what we're looking at is the fact that the weather this year is really tumultuous. What you're seeing and what they're telling us is, for the last 3 years, we've had a very stable weather pattern. Okay, and the way it usually is up at the top, and I spoke about this before, there's the polar vortex that runs around the North Pole. That's because the planet's spinning around below it, and this is kind of like the void at the top of it. Okay. Remember a year or so ago whenever Texas suddenly had that Arctic cold winter that came down there and just kind of stuck? That's when a bulge in that can come kind of slosh down on the pole, from the pole, and that super cold air get trapped somewhere. So Texas was having below 0 temps and stuff like that, and then with wind chill it was ridiculous. And relatively late in the year, you know, late in the winter.
Yeah.
Now what they're seeing with the breakup is below that polar vortex there should be another jet stream. Well, this jet stream, instead of being a nice smooth river of air, it's this year. It is all broke up. So it's sucking in Texas, New Mexico, it's sucking the heat up from the deserts of Mexico, way further up north, and then it's doing a dive and coming back down to us. So we're getting thunderstorms every afternoon where the moisture is coming off the Gulf and going up, and it's slamming into this, and boom, instant supercells. And then they're either going north or south or west, or east, excuse me. It just depends on how strong the weather is at that moment, which way it's going to push it. And so right now you would look around and we've got a few little clouds, blue skies, nothing
Mostly
to
blue
it.
sky.
But when you look at the radar, and down here south of us, it looked like a hurricane coming into Panama City. It was just supercell after supercell, probably 100 miles across, all them storms. And now north and west of us, we've got another big, huge block. All the ingredients are here for us to go from what you're seeing right here to raining 5 inches per hour.
One thing that we don't want to confuse people on, in our situation here, what rain hit here is not what's endangering us.
It's what's up there.
It's what's up there.
This river drains from nearly 300 miles.
Yeah.
Alabama has been called the Amazon of America because if you look at it, it looks like a brain. It's so many channels of water.
Yes.
And this river is taking 300 miles worth of territory and funneling it down.
Yeah, it's almost 200 miles long, but it's 100 miles. The floodplain's 100 miles wide.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of land that this little bitty body of water is draining. And what's happened north of us is what we are preparing for now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the Florida Panhandle, if you're in the Panhandle, because that's all that's south of us. If you're in the Panhandle, be aware.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not saying go out blindly panicking and buy up, 1,000 rolls of toilet paper. What we're saying is, think, take 10 minutes to think. Plan. Because if you don't plan, you could possibly, you could pay the ultimate price for just that much of common sense and that much forethought. It could mean the difference.
Me and my stepbrothers were camping out on this river years ago. And it was summertime, it was like this, and this was before the days of internet and all like that. So you had one weather report, twice a day. And they said that it was going to be raining up north of us, but not down here where we were at. So we thought, great. And so we went camping, and we're floating down the river, and we found a sandbar that was coming 3, 4, 5 feet out of the water, and that's where we put our camp on that. Never heard thunder, it never rained. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was in my little tent, I rolled over, and when I rolled over, my hand hit, it splashed. The water had crept up, and whenever I suddenly realized it and got out from underneath my tarp, the water was like right here. I was the low man. 2 of the canoes are already floating. Luckily, they're tied up. But it had slowly just creeped up because all that rain north of us was now showing up. And we didn't take that into account,
That's inexperience.
That was, but I learned from that.
My point. You live, you learn, you talk to people who know, who have been through this. Okay? Get little, it's like there's no book out there that has all the answers. But if you take a nugget from here, and a nugget from here, and a nugget from over there, you're going to get most of your answers. I stuck my hand in my pocket and I felt this. This looks like just a horrible conglomeration of junk, okay? This rides within arm's reach of me all the time. And what's on it? A flashlight. A second flashlight. An emergency whistle. A can opener. Emergency tinder. Striker.
Fire striker.
Yeah, a ferro rod. And lo and behold, a second ferro rod. And right here, a second can opener. Thank you, Chris Hall. He gifted me this at Blackie's Gathering 2 years ago, and it's ridden with me every day ever since.
Now that's not all he's got, but that's always on him.
That's always on me, so that way I've got, and you know, any good Southern gentleman's going to have a pocket knife.
Got pocket knives.
It's mandatory.
There's receipts in your wallet you can shred up
Yep.
to use for tinder and make a
Yes.
spark, and you already got a little bit of tinder to get a fire going.
You can. You will be warm.
Every vehicle has got a gear set in it. Every person, for me and my wife, him and his family, has an emergency gear set at the place where we can grab it and go. Should we have a flood or something like that. Hurricanes, you get plenty of time to take warning and you can make the setup.
Exactly.
A flood, you don't get as much warning.
Yeah.
A tornado, you don't get any warning. It's just here.
Yeah.
You know.
That's the prime mover behind this entire old ways. Okay. Yeah, there's not a lot of old ways to it, but to have old ways, you've got to be there. Okay. We want you there. All right. Like he was saying, with a hurricane, you have as much as a week's run up. You know it's coming. You just got to get out there and do it. With a flood, you might have 10 hours notice, 12 hours notice. With a tornado, it's there. Okay. You know the storms are coming in, but you don't know anything about the tornado until it hits you.
And that, whenever the house gets tore up, and being here where we've got hurricanes, this is how I'm prepared. I have my house, and then there's also an outbuilding. In that outbuilding is most of my camping equipment that you've seen before. So if my house gets damaged, I can pull my camping stuff out and set up my front yard with my camping stuff. Even if that place gets damaged, the way I've got it situated, I'll find my big bags and stuff. You know, unless it's an F5 and it just sits on top of it, in which case we're not going to survive that.
Yeah.
But because of that, I can set back up in my location to await help, supplies, etc.
Yes.
That ain't true in flood. I can't do that. I've got to evacuate this place, otherwise I'm going to be, you know, playing guppy. I've got to be able to move. And so, do you have the medications you're going to need? If you're one of those like the silver wolves that I can't live without this, do you have a supply of that in the bag so I can grab it? I ain't got to run to the bathroom and start sorting through everything to figure out what I need. A good friend of mine, he has to have a lot of medical stuff. And what we've talked about with him is in his pill sets that he's got sitting there in the bathroom, I made up a special lid. I said, you give me when you save the empties. And I took the lids of it and marked them with a color code. So when he gets a new supply of whatever this is, put one of these lids on it. Grab all the red lids. That's the important stuff. See, the rest of it is but these are the ones you got to grab and throw in the bag to run with. And so that way he don't have to go through all of the medications. Just grab the red lids and run.
There's a very, very thin line between casualty and survivor.
Yeah.
That may sound melodramatic, but there is. It's a very thin line between being a casualty and being a survivor.
We have ourselves seen hurricanes and tornadoes where a place will get just devastated, and you'll come by 2 days later or whatever, and there'll be somebody set up out there with full camping kit, has Coleman stove, they've got ice chest, they pulled everything out of the refrigerator, and they're just camping. Yeah, their house is trashed, but they're camping.
That happened in Katrina.
Yeah.
Blackie loves to tell the story where he's watching the TV and all of a sudden the helicopter pans around and here's this guy sitting there with his reenactment tent and his reenactment gear and his fire and food on the spit.
Sitting there in a chair with a beer going, hey, you know, everybody else has, you know, got signs up, we need food, we need water, and he's sitting there, he's good.
Surviving.
You know, a little bit of preparation
goes a long way.
The thing that I remember the most from Grouch was this statement: it takes no effort to be miserable. So if you want to be miserable, don't do anything. You will achieve your goal, you'll be miserable. But if you do not want to be miserable, then make some effort. You know, it ain't got to be everything, but just make an effort. Try to make it a little bit of improvement. It doesn't have to all be done at once. We've been telling y'all about this now for over a year. But this is real time what's going on right now. You're seeing the flooding in New England. We're under flood watch down here, and there's going to be parts down here in the south that's going to get localized floods and stuff. This may spin up tornadoes. You know, you just got to be prepared. That's just the only way it is. If you're not prepared, you're asking, I want to be miserable. And if you want to be miserable, make no effort.
Yeah, I'm like him. I've got a mini storage unit. My family has a mini storage company, and I've got one of the units, and I've got all of my stuff in there. I can get to it with no problem at all. I can get up, get in, get loaded, and get out in about 10 minutes.
It's basically caching. What we're saying is we've got stuff at different locations, so that should this location be completely destroyed, I've got stuff at other locations as a backup to augment what I've already got in my vehicle.
Right, and I can almost see from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a non-issue. There's something else that I had wanted to point out. Like I said, we're not the harbingers of doom. You know, we're not trying to make you lose your mind and panic and go out and make these preparations. When you're packing, mom needs her box, dad needs his box, and the kids need their box. When you're packing for the kids, remember this, their world has just flipped. If you've got this kid out and are actively using it, their world is upside down. They need snacks, they need juice, they need toys.
Something to occupy their time.
They need activity, okay? They need normality.
Because your world's been flipped upside down too.
Yeah.
And you need to focus on what you got to do to keep us safe. Not mama, 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 mama constantly. You need to be able to something so you can think.
Make sure your car chargers work for your phones, because yeah, you may have a cell tower that goes down locally, but if you're semi-mobile and can get 10 miles down the road, you might get a signal.
Make sure you've got gas in your car.
Yes.
How many times we see that where the hurricane is going to hit. We are 12 hours out. Walmart is wall to wall full of people buying food. Now they're buying their supplies.
Right.
And everybody wants gas, and all the gas stations are running out. They've been talking about this storm for 10 days.
What's your excuse?
Why are you waiting until now? And then the day after the hurricane misses us, they're back at Walmart returning all that stuff.
Yep. I know what it was I was going to say. 2 years ago, was it 3 years ago, Michael?
Yeah, like, I think it was
like 3 years ago, Panama City got hit by a devastating Category 5 named Hurricane Michael.
Yeah.
And
it did like Katrina. It went from a Category 1 or 2, and in like 12 hours it blew up to a 5, and as it was making landfall, it was still blowing up. It breached 5 right before it hit land.
When it was 12 hours out, it had a 25-mile-an-hour headwind. Well, no, I'm sorry, it had been more than that to be named. It had about a 45-mile-an-hour sustained wind. In the space of those 12 hours, it hooked to the right and gained to almost 250-mile-an-hour winds, and accelerated up into just east of Panama City, which is the Lynn Haven and
Mexico
Beach. Mexico Beach looked like the finger of God had come down and just wiped it off. There was one house that was standing, and it was built to hurricane codes, 2020 hurricane codes.
Yeah.
It was reinforced concrete and had backup generators, the whole 9 yards. These folks dropped a lot of cash on this house.
Yeah.
But it was the only thing standing.
And at the same time, and we've talked about this previously, when you leave here, we're over an hour away, okay? You go down here to Dothan, which is about 30 miles from us, and you turn, and that's almost due north where the damage is, and you start heading down toward Panama City. You're about 20 minutes out of Dothan, and all the pine trees are leaning at an angle like that back toward the Gulf. That was the circular motion of the wind hooking and heading back to the Gulf. That was the weak side of that hurricane. And for the next hour of driving, every tree on both sides of the road are leaning in that direction. That was how much power was sucking back to the Gulf.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, their mother lived down there at Mexico Beach. And she was had been talking to her mother, and her mother refused to leave. And so after the storm, she lost contact with her about 2 hours before the storm hit. Phone went dead. The day after the hurricane, the preacher, because across the street was one of them little bitty teeny tiny churches out in a community, she had managed to get a hold of the preacher and asked would he check on her mom. He had a satellite phone because he'd spent time down in Central and South America, so he could get a link. And he contacted her and he said, I can't find the house, I can't find the church. There were just pipes sticking up out of the ground. It was gone. It was sand with pipes sticking up. There ain't even a telephone pole left. He knew where the street was. He went down, he panned around, and there was a couple of bricks laying there, cinder block. There was no foundation of the house. The house was gone. They found the house 3 blocks over where it floated inward with the storm surge. Luckily, the mom had got out. Somebody had came, that's when she lost phone service. Somebody came and just basically kicked in the door and said, you're leaving with us. That was friends of the family and drug her out of there. Because that house just disintegrated. The main part of it ended up being found 2 blocks away where it had floated. You know, there was nothing left. You have to be prepared.
Right. Like I said, this isn't the first time you've heard this, and God willing, it will not be the last. Right now, we're just under a watch, but a watch can become a warning fairly quickly. Take the time, if you're not even in a flood-prone area, if you're in another part of the world, go get you something, because if you're in the mountains, you're going to get a blizzard, okay? You're going to get a landslide. You could theoretically get a flash flood coming down those mountain passes, okay? Prepare now. If you're in the desert, you know, you're going to get adverse weather conditions. Think ahead. Prepare now. Plan ahead. Invest in flats of bottled water, because you can get by for a week, 10 days without food, but only about 72 hours without water. Okay. One of the first things that I was talking to my kids about this morning was, if I get called out, I want them to get we have 2 7-gallon water buckets, water containers. Stick them under the bathroom faucet, turn the faucet on, and fill it up.
And leave it there.
And just let it sit.
If we need it, we need it. If we don't, we ain't out nothing.
No, we're not. And, you know, one can be used to flush the toilet and one can be used to drink. Don't get them confused, though.
Don't know.
Anyway, I digress.
But anyway, that's what we wanted to talk about this time, because, like I said, we're living it right now.
Yeah, this is real time for us.
So we just wanted to share that with you today and tell you, be prepared. Look at it. Figure it out ahead of time. When it looks, they're saying, you know, Friday is going to be real severe weather and everything, and you've had a problem with this in the past, it'd be a good time to go fill up your car on Thursday. You know, just because. If that flooding and stuff that's going on in New England, and they're saying we're expecting more flooding rain, that'd be a good time to have like 2 extra 5-gallon cans full of gas.
Yeah.
If I got to take a long route to find my way back out of here, because the straight route is not easy. When he's talked about, and when we started out about the flood at Elba in 90, I was working in Dothan at that time, and that flash flood came through, took out Elba. It also flooded over the only bridge back to where I lived in Enterprise. So for me to leave Dothan to get back to Enterprise, I had to go about 125 miles all the way down into Florida and then come back up another route that didn't cross any of the major rivers, because the rivers make a V. So I'm blocked up over here. I had to go all the way down here and cross a big bridge and almost to the Gulf to come up inside that V and not be stuck.
That's like during the same flood for me. to get from my house on the east side of town all the way around town to the city shop was a 100-mile trip.
Yeah.
Okay, we clocked it. As the crow flies, it's 2 miles from the bridge that I was talking about at the beginning to the city shop. But during the flood, with 17 feet of water downtown, it was 100 miles from point A to point B.
To get back.
Yeah, and one of my most vivid memories of being on the bridge is when you have a flood, the water does this constantly, and when the wave would hit the bridge, it would shake the bridge, but also the air behind it would get trapped underneath, and the back end of the wave coming up would hit the bridge and compact that air underneath the bridge, and the drain holes would go
Yeah. Constantly blowing water 10 feet in the air.
blowing water and air out. It's scary when you're standing on a bridge and it's blowing water at you, and the bridge is doing this. You know, that'll get your attention
That's
quick.
the time to go somewhere else.
I remember a tree coming down the river, the root ball first. It hit the side of the bridge and stopped, and the bridge is sitting there shuddering like it wants to get pushed off of the foundation, off the bridge posts, pilings. The tree, there's enough space underneath the bridge that the tree flipped and went under the water. And while we were watching, we watched downstream to see where the tree would come up. It was 100 yards downstream before it went around a curve, before it went splush and came up.
Like a torpedo.
Yeah, that's the power that we're talking about.
Well, anything else, brother?
I think we've covered a plethora.
Well, guys, we greatly appreciate y'all watching, and there'll be more old ways coming on.
Old ways.
Old ways, yes. We will do more. But till next time, I'm Blackie.
And Bear.
Wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.